Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elise Vennik and I welcome you today on Tallinna Vesi's webinar. The webinar will be hosted by the Chairman of the Board, Karl-Heino Brooks, and Chief Financial Officer, Riina Käi. Firstly, Karl-Heino Brooks and Riina Käi will introduce Tallinna Vesi's financial results of the second quarter of 2017, and then, right after the presentation, we will open the floor for questions. I invite you all to use the question box on the right-hand side of the screen to send the questions. All of the questions will be answered after the presentation. Now I'll give it over to Carl.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the Q2 2017 webinar today. Financial and operation performance for the second quarter of 2017 has been strong, and all of our operational KPIs have been delivered. As you'll hear from Riina shortly, the financial performance of the company has been very good, showing an increase in both gross profit and operating profit compared to the second quarter of 2016. So, moving on to the operational update. The quality of our water supply to our customers in Tallinn remains excellent. There was only one water quality sample failure from the 1,482 samples taken across our service area during the first 6 months of this year. This equates to a quality rate of 99.93%, which is very high and well in excess of our KPI within our services agreement. Complementing this, the final effluent, which is discharged into the Baltic Sea from our wastewater treatment plant at Paljussaare, has been fully compliant with no failures at all in the samples that have been taken and tested. The leakage rate is also very encouraging in the first 6 months of 2017. It currently stands at 13.3%, which is the best performance in the company's history. In the second quarter of 2017, the company launched its mobile application to iPhone and Android phone users, and we will develop that as the months go on, and we'll add more and more functionality to it. In the first half of 2017, Tallinna Vesi had its recertification audits completed by an external auditor, and both Tallinna Vesi and its subsidiary Watercom successfully passed these audits related to our quality systems and occupational health and safety management systems. In parallel with that, we also submitted our annual environmental report, and once again we've attained our EMAS accreditation. As a company, we've always contributed to initiatives that add value and positively impact our surrounding environment. It has become a nice tradition for us to sponsor Estonian youth song and dance celebration by supplying refreshing drinking water to these events. Over 24,000 singers and 9,000 dancers took part in this event, which took place a few weeks ago. So, operational financial performance is very good. As I've said, we'll now have a look at our ongoing tariff dispute. Not too much of an update to give you today, but as always, I'll give you a reminder of some of the background that goes behind the dispute. So, AS Tallinna Vesi has been in a local court dispute with the Competition Authority since 2011. This dispute arose because the Competition Authority in Estonia has so far to date refused to approve the annual water tariff mechanism application submitted by the company based on the service agreement that was signed back in 2001 when the company was first privatised. So we're currently looking at this on two parallel legal fronts. So first of all, I'll talk about the local court case and give you some of the milestones that have taken place over the last few years. So on the 5th of June 2015, the Tallinn Administrative Court made their decision and dismissed ASTV's claim. Tallinn Administrative Court released the reasoning for that dismissal in October 2015 and was of the opinion that the tariff part of the service agreement, which is our original contract with the City of Tallinn, which in itself had been deemed a public law contract by the Estonian courts in 2012, was not binding on the Estonian Competition Authority. AS Tallinna Vesi subsequently filed its appeal to the District Court on the 11th of November 2015. The District Court hearing took place on the 23rd of November 2016, and a decision was made on the 26th of January 2017 dismissing the company's claim again. On the 27th of February 2017, the company filed a cassation to the Supreme Court in Estonia, and we're pleased to say that on the 20th of June 2017, the Supreme Court decided to take the cassation into proceedings. The company continues to be of a position that a service agreement, which was signed back at the time of the privatisation, is legal and should be fulfilled. Until a final verdict in the tariff dispute, the preliminary injunction applied by Estonian courts remains in force, which means that the tariffs remain frozen at their 2010 levels. So as I mentioned before, we do have two proceedings running in parallel. So I'll give you an update now on the international arbitration proceedings. So a while ago we decided to pursue compensation via the International Centre for Settlement of Investment Disputes, or ICSID for short. This decision was made by the Supervisory Council of ASTV and is an arbitration proceedings against the Republic of Estonia for breach of the bilateral investment treaty between the Netherlands and the Republic of Estonia, which is a clause contained within the original service agreement. The hearings for the international arbitration were held back in November last year, and these were broadcast live on the ICSID website. If anybody's interested, these broadcastings can still be seen on our investor homepage, and links are there to each of the individual cross-examinations of the witnesses that were present at the hearings. Both parties submitted their post-hearing briefs in February of this year, or summaries, and we're still awaiting the decision from the ICSID panel, which is expected in the latter half of this year. The process remains ongoing, and of course we'll keep all our investors updated as and when anything significant happens on the investors website. And obviously we're always trying to pursue a negotiated settlement, but so far that's not been possible. So I'm now going to hand you over to Rina. Just a reminder again that you're free to ask questions at the end of the presentations, but I'll now hand you over to Rina, who'll take you through the financial results in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, and good morning to everyone. Now I would like to give you the overview of the financial performance of AS Tallinna Vesi in the second quarter of 2017. I will start with the financial highlights, and then we'll give a more detailed overview about sales and costs. The performance of the group continues to be good and stable. Total sales revenues were 1.6% or 0.23 million euros higher than in the second quarter of 2016. The water supply and wastewater disposal services sales increased year-on-year by 2.3% or 0.28 million euros, and construction and asphalting services increased by 0.04 million euros, whilst the sales of stormwater services inside the service area decreased by 0.09 million euros. The gross profit in the second quarter of 2017 was higher by 2.7% or 0.22 million euros compared to the same period in 2016. The gross profit was impacted by higher water and sewage service revenues, which was accompanied by lower depreciation and pollution tax expenses, whilst it was balanced by lower stormwater revenues and higher chemicals, electricity and construction and asphalting related costs. Compared to the second quarter of 2016, the operating profit was 23% or 1.34 million euros higher. The operating profit was impacted by earlier mentioned higher gross profit and considerably lower tariff dispute related costs. Compared to the second quarter of 2016, the net profit of the company was over 4.5 times or 3.49 million euros higher. In addition to the changes mentioned before, it was complemented by lower net financial expenses and dividend-related income tax cost. Now let's move on to the next slides, and I will comment on the changes in the revenues and expenses a bit closer. Let's start from the sales. As mentioned before, total sales revenues for the second quarter of 2017 increased by 1.6%. Total revenues from water and wastewater services were by 2.3% or 0.28 million euros higher than in the second quarter of 2016, amounting to 12.9 million euros. As we operate with the frozen tariff since 2010, the change in revenues is solely driven by the consumption. In the second quarter of 2017, water and wastewater revenues in the main service area increased, while the water and wastewater revenues from outside area remained at the same level as in the second quarter in 2016. The domestic consumption from Tallinna and Vesi area increased compared to the same period in 2016 by 1.8%, or 131,000 cubic meters to 7.3 million cubic meters. There was also an increase of 2.6%, or 67,000 cubic meters in commercial sector consumption, which amounted to 2.59 million cubic meters. The increase in domestic sector came mainly from apartment blocks, which is our biggest customer group. The consumption in apartment blocks increased by 1.8%, and it was accompanied by a slight increase in other private clients groups. In commercial sector, the growth came mainly from the industry sector, accompanied by a small increase in the leisure sector. Total volumes from outside service area were relatively stable, decreasing by 0.2% to 1.34 million cubic meters compared to the comparative period in 2016. The water and wastewater volumes were relatively stable, being 0.8% or 9,000 cubic meters down. It was balanced by a 3.2% or 6,000 cubic meters increase in stormwater volumes. Stormwater volumes from main service area were down by 13.8% or 635,000 cubic meters. The construction services, design and asphalting revenues were slightly higher, being 4.5% or 0.04 million euros higher in the second quarter of 2017. This now takes us to the overview of costs. The company's underlying profit performance in the second quarter has been good. The total cost of goods sold in the second quarter of 2017 was at the same level as in 2016, being 6.2 million euros. Direct main production costs were higher by 5.9% or 91,000 euros in the second quarter in 2017. Higher water abstraction charges, electricity and chemical costs were balanced by lower pollution tax expenses. Water abstraction charges were higher by 3.2% or 9,000 euros and were driven by increase in treated water volumes. Chemical costs were higher by 23.5% or 67,000 euros, mainly due to the higher methanol price and usage of polymers in the wastewater treatment process. It was accompanied by higher usage of different chemicals in water treatment process due to the higher treated water volumes and dosage. Electricity costs were up by 6.7% or 49,000 euros due to the higher prices than in the second quarter of 2016. Pollution tax expense decreased by 14.5% to 34,000 euros, mainly due to lower pollution load of nitrogen and decrease in treated wastewater volumes. Construction and asphalting services cost slight increases related to higher construction and asphalting services revenues mentioned earlier. Decrease in administrative costs is mostly affected by lower dispute-related legal costs. Legal costs still will continue to affect the administrative costs up to the end of both local and international dispute, the amount of which is dependent on work that needs to be put into both disputes. Net financial expenses have mostly been affected by the non-monetary revaluation of the fair value of the swap contracts, having the positive net expense of 0.37 million euros year-on-year in the second quarter. If we will now move on to the cash flows. The cash position as of 30th of June 2017 is strong. The company's cash balance stood at 35.3 million euros, forming 16.4% of the total assets. Compared to the end of the second quarter of 2016, the cash balance has increased by 4.56 million euros. The biggest contribution to the cash flows comes from the main operations. The company's collection of receivables continues to be high, being 99.45% on average. In 6 months of 2017, net cash flows from investing activities resulted in a cash outflow of 2.8 million euros compared to the cash outflow of 4.4 million euros in the comparative period in 2016. The investments into fixed assets were lower by 1 million euros, and the compensation for pipes were higher by 0.6 million euros. Biggest investments in last year were related to Tehase collector, which was finalized by the end of 2016. In 2017, also the biggest investments are related to pipe and reconstruction. In 2017, we also have invested into new laboratory equipment. Financing cash flows resulted in the net outflow of 11.8 million euros, compared to 19 million euros in 2016. The financing cash flows were highly impacted by lower interest payments of 7.2 million euros. That would conclude the overview of the financial highlights in the second quarter of 2016.
Thank you, Karl-Heino Brooks and Triina Käi, for the presentation. Now we will move on to the questions. May I remind you all that your questions are very welcome in the right-hand side of the presentation view. There's a question box where you can type your questions. We will give you all a minute now to ask your questions, and then we will answer them in the order that they were received. Please write your questions. Okay, we have our first question, and I'll read it out. It comes from Natalia Stepukova. Can it be concluded that Tallinna Vesi has changed its dividend policy and does not guarantee dividend payout according to formula that considers the last year's dividends plus consumer price index change compared to last year? If the policy has not changed, then when will the second part of dividends be paid out?
Okay, thank you, Elise, and thank you, Natalia, for the question. As discussed at the AGM and by TSE, the dividend policy for the company hasn't changed. What we have done, though, is taken a decision to defer part of the dividend for this year until we get some decisions with respect to the tariff dispute. As I went through before, we are awaiting two big decisions this year, so one from the Supreme Court of Estonia and also one from the ICSID arbitration panel. When we're armed with the information from those decisions, we'll then have a look at our dividends again. Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. Now, once again, everybody, please feel free to ask your questions. Seems we don't have any other questions coming up, so thank you for participating. The recording of the presentation will be available on the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel webinar playlist shortly. Thank you, Karl-Heino Brooks and Triina Käi, for the presentation and the answer given. Participants, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.